Here, the FBI has joined the investigation into the deadly shooting in New York City that killed 4 people, including an off-duty NYPD officer. The gunman was identified as 27-year-old Shane Tamura from Las Vegas, who has a history of mental illness.
Retired FBI agent Jason Pack joins us now. Jason, the Post is reporting that the gunman was carrying a note that cites the NFL and blamed football for his apparent struggle with CTE. He also asked that his brain be studied. Now, the NFL has offices here on floors 5 through 8. Are you hearing anything from your sources in the FBI throughout law enforcement as to why this guy ended up going to the 33rd floor?
Not yet. That's one of the major questions investigators have this morning as they work overnight to piece together this senseless murder that happened out there. And we've heard of CTE, Todd, with the NFL players and the concussions. And so for some reason, there's something triggered him. There's some kind of grievance that triggered him or perceived grievance, whether that was against a particular person or the NFL. That's still what investigators are trying to learn this morning. And the reason we just don't know why the elevator got off on that particular floor. A lot of times in most of the buildings in New York, you can see you get on an elevator and it's only one floor and, somebody else determines where the elevator goes. It's not like in the movies where you push all the buttons, where the kids are pushing all the buttons there. So that's another question investigators need to answer, is what particularly was he looking for? There was that management firm on that floor. So is that relevant? Is that not? That's what they're looking for answers for today.
Yeah, so he killed several people, unfortunately, when he entered the building. But then when it comes to the elevator, the gunman let a woman walk off the elevator that he entered, just let her walk right past him. Why do you think that is? Do you think that she just got lucky, or was there a calculated decision there on his part?
Well, as a lot of the guests have commented over the past several hours looking at this, he had he was on some kind of mission and was determined to go in somewhere and do something. And so this lady wasn't her time and it wasn't her day.
That's a crazy thing to think about if you think about it, man. Like, it just wasn't your time. It wasn't your day. Let me first start off by saying that prayers up for all of the victims, because nobody deserves to lose their life because somebody else has grievances or somebody else is mad or angry. And it's funny because when I pay attention to what's happening on social media, and I'm glad that we're going to discuss this on the Millionaire Morning Show, because it had some time to develop and I'll be able to get a little bit more details. But the fact of the matter is there are people that are actually celebrating when gunmen or people go in and they start to kill people inside of an establishment until it's somebody that they know. Until it's somebody that they know. People are literally cheering and rooting on this senseless violence, this senseless killing, and these people. And it kind of reminds me of the Luigi guy, which everybody forgot about, that y'all said was going to be awesome and was going to be a martyr and well-known and all of that. Nobody even talks about him anymore, except for me, because I use him as a reference point of how senseless some of these killings are, of when he killed the United Healthcare CEO, and they still laid off a whole bunch of people. And so when I see stuff like this happen and I see stuff like this play out, my first thought is, prayers up for the families of the victims, because nobody is ever going to know who the victims are. And my second thought is, people think that just because their life is messed up that they can go and take everybody else's life. He wants to blame it on CTE. He wants to blame it on, I'm guessing, that's something that's attached to the NFL, and I'm pretty sure that we'll find out more details. But according to reports, over 4 people, he killed 4 people, and then he killed himself on top of it over in New York, inside of an office building. And so, that's why I say that people need to be very vigilant. They need to be very, very mindful of the things that's going on around them, be situationally aware. Often at times I say women are oblivious to what's going on around them. Me personally, I just got a habit, and maybe it's just because I was raised in the inner city. I don't even sit with my back to the door. I always scan the place to pay attention to what's going on. I'm always looking to see who's coming in. And it's unfortunate that we have to live that way because there are people that'll just walk up and shoot up inside of an office building, go up to a random floor. There are people that will go inside of a church. We've seen that happen before. And this happens in the hood every single day. And that's another thing that we don't even really talk about. You know, we talk about these mass shootings when it comes to these office buildings, New York City, because it grabs headlines. But every single day in the hood, somewhere in the United States of America, there is a mass shooting. And we don't talk about it until it's racially motivated, or we think that it's racially motivated because it could be a Mexican man or and a white guy, or a white guy and a black guy, and the black guy got beat up. We are more obsessed with what's happening in Cincinnati right now as far as the guy getting beat up, which we're going to cover that too on a Millionaire Morning Show. But we're not as obsessed and we're not as mindful of what happens every single day in a lot of these locations that we know people are being under attack and under siege. And so when people can't even go to work without having to worry about, you know, whether or not somebody is going to come in and shoot everything up, that is very problematic. And we have a cultural problem inside of the United States of America. And usually, most of the time, this happens in huge liberal cities, the New Yorks, the Los Angeles. Of course, you know, you have the schools and the churches and all of that stuff. And that tends to happen in down south in Texas or something like that. But let's find out a little bit more and then we'll deep dive.
Focused on some other mission and trying to get to a particular location, it seems, based on the things we know publicly.
Jason, describe the coordination that's happening right now between local authorities in New York City, state authorities, as well as the feds.
That's a good question, Todd. So in New York, the FBI has a squad called CTE-26. That's the counterterrorism squad. That's the squad that goes out to the New Year's Eve things, and they investigate all the threats in New York City. The most interesting thing about that squad is that they have a member of every department and every agency in New York, from the federal side to the local and state side. So they have members of every department. So even FDNY has somebody represented on that squad. So they're no strangers to each other. And let's face it, the NYPD is the most capable police department in the world, something like 35,000 sworn NYPD officers. There's only 13,000 or so FBI agents in the whole world. So they can provide some kind of resources sometimes that the NYPD may not have, but NYPD is really well-sourced and has a lot of resources. You heard the assistant director, Chris Rea, at the press conference last night, noted that the person was not in any FBI holding, so that's important to know that at least he didn't pop up on their radar anywhere.
I have a friend who works in this building, and she says it's like many others out there where you enter the lobby, you need a key to go through the turnstile, and then need a key to get to the floors, the separate floors when you enter them after you exit the elevator. I'm sure that many people can relate to that very scenario, not just in New York City, but across the country. Do you think that as a result of this shooting, that office buildings will change their basic security because of this?
Well, we saw in some of the pictures on social media the barricading that office members did in some of those offices there. They put couches, everything they could find. You see the photo right there on your screen. They barricaded themselves into the door and make themselves a harder target. That's super important in any type of situation. They apparently that could be evident of some training that some of the companies do now. It's important to be aware of your surroundings and don't hesitate to take action. Even if this would have been something that wasn't, at least you would have been safe. In this case, it turned out they needed to do that.
I vividly remember that in corporate America, not only did we have to do training when it came to acknowledging biases and diversity, equity, and inclusion. It was three main trainings. Actually, it was four main trainings that we had to go through. It was biases and diversity, equity, and inclusion. Sexual harassment, that was always a major one. Phishing scams, making sure that nobody was able to get into your system by getting your password and all of that, and making sure that you lock your laptop up if you out and about, into your trunk and all of that. And the last one that I remember vividly is we always had to do a module where they did a simulation of what would happen if you had an active shooter, because I worked at a bank, right? I didn't work at a regular bank like a banking branch. I worked in like the technical center of a major big building, right? And so companies are doing these type of trainings because they have to protect their people, and it is now normalized. And usually whenever something starts to get normalized, that's when companies start to take action as far as spending money on training to ensure people know exactly what to do if you ever have an active shooter in your building. I'll stay on top of it. The more information that comes out, I'll continue to bring you guys the latest updates. I love you. I appreciate you. Make sure y'all tap into the Patreon. Link is in the description. T. Hanley, 40% off your first order, 20% off for life.